here we're going to look more at solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. So first, let's just recall the steps that we want to use to solve using the quadratic formula. First, we want to put the equation in standard form. That means we want to equal to 0. The next step is to write down the quadratic formula. You need to write down the quadratic formula every time you use it. That will help you to remember it. Once we have the quadratic formula written down, we're going to substitute the values for a, b, and c into the quadratic formula, and then we simplify. This simplifying step can be fairly tedious, so we've got to really be careful to watch out for careless mistakes during that step. So let's look at an equation. Here we have 2x squared plus 8x equals -7. So my first step is going to be to get it in standard form. So I need to add the 7 to both sides of my equation. So that will leave me with 2x squared plus 8x plus 7 equals 0. Now that it's in standard form, I know that my a is 2, my b is 8, and my c is a +7. Now I want to write down my formula. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So now I want to put my values in. The value for b is 8. So this tells me to use the opposite of 8. So I'm going to have a -8 plus or minus the square root of b squared will be 8 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is 7. All of that over 2 times 2. So now I just have to simplify this. I need to do the work under the radical. So let's see, this would be -8 plus or minus the square root of 8 squared is 64. Then I have 4 times 2 times 7. So that's the same as 8 times 7, which is 56. So I have minus 56 all over 4. So this becomes -8 plus or minus the square root of 64 minus 56 is 8. Now, this, I've done the arithmetic in this part of the answer. But now I need to simplify the radical. You cannot leave your answer in this form if the radical has a perfect square factor under it. So let's come over here and work on simplifying this expression. Think about my square root of 8. I cannot leave the square root of 8 with a perfect square factor in it. So if I rewrite the 8 as 4 times 2, I can split up the square root of 8 into the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. That enables me to take the square root of 4, which is 2. So I end up with just 2 times the square root of 2. So I have -8 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 2 over 4. Now, I've simplified the radical, but now I need to simplify the fraction. I have a common factor in the numerator. So I'm going to pull out my greatest common factor. My greatest common factor in the numerator means the greatest common factor for -8 and 2. So that's going to be a 2. That would leave me with a -4 plus or minus the square root of 2 over 4. Now let's look at this a little bit more. This is like factoring -8 plus or minus 2x. So the common factor there would be 2, which would leave you with the -4 plus or minus the x. It's just that we don't call it an x here. It's actually a square root of 2. So that's how I factored the numerator. Now once I have the numerator factored, I can then simplify this factor that I pulled out, the 2, with the 4 that's in the denominator. So each of these share a factor of 2. So when I remove a factor of 2 from both, I end up with -4 plus or minus the square root of 2 all over 2. And this would be my solution.